Well, hello everyone. Here to show the group work financial aid talked about is like the sketches right here, and then basic information about the for federal financial aid, and basically though that it's a type of application to where most of us know that if we were to go to the internet site and then to complete it though, and then knowing the types of information they ask for, that type of stuff. And knowing about if we're going to be attending classes though, is that knowing that you have right here is example right here of a classroom. And let's just say that with the classes though, that a lot of times that types of information I want to know about a lot of it could be that related to like the school that you're going to, and as well as how much it costs per semester and that type of stuff. But I went and drew right here are some lines right here, these lines that could present. It's like the types of information that they more likely collect, if it's going to be anything that's related to about any personal information as well as general information, that type of stuff. But on the other hand, that knowing about that with for financial aid, that I guess that usually a lot of times that they say that it's not free, it's not really what you call free, paid for benefits. I guess you say that there are some things about for financial aid. It's that they are paid for, such as maybe a few books and stuff like that. Electronic books, stuff like that, that would be paid for. But then on the other hand, that knowing about is like the types of stuff that more likely that's not going to be paid for, and more likely that it's like talking about say for group work, as knowing that if we actually do the calculations, and then if you're working on like use like the colors right here, and then let's just say on average that they ask about information such as about how much money we make per year, and let's just say on average it's about 25,000 per year, and 25,041 per year. They would collect that. It's like from the tax documents, if it's about on average about 25,041 or so per year, or maybe a little bit less than that, maybe minus 7,741.03. So a lot of times, like with most class courses, that they usually say that the amount that's owed back, it's like for how much it was borrowed, especially knowing that the cost of the books, and as well as the class courses, and about that maybe that application fee as well. And most students will wonder about like maybe the ink cartridges and maybe the cost of the books, that knowing about why is it that maybe not everything is paid for, such as if you need a calculator for class, or for ink cartridges and pencils and pens, that type of stuff. And knowing about, I'm like, yeah, that if it's all about the fact about that it's the money management is all divided equally, to where you pay half and the school pays for it, and the financial aid takes care of part of it. But let's just say that knowing about that for some students who collect financial aid, that they may think that I'm like, yeah, that if you get approved for financial aid, that more likely that they usually say that up to about maybe 50, 40 or so percent of the cost of a lot of things are paid for. But then of course that all depends on how much money you make, and as well as the classes, and then other circumstances also. But let's just say though that on average that they more likely say if you can pay about up to $2,000, if you can pay up to $2,000 for that year, I guess maybe from the first year, let's just say on average it'll be about $2,850.41. Let's just say on average it's about that much. Most students that more likely that they said that they would pay on average is about $2,850 that year. So if it's going to be about $6,000, let's just say, like I mentioned before, if it's going to be about $6,841 per semester, then it's like divide that. Like if we would actually do the math and knowing about, I'm like, yeah, college that don't cost $1, but let's just say on average though that if it was $1 per math configuration, knowing that if we would actually do the math and knowing about the credit hours too, but let's just say though that most students I'm sure would probably say like that if they get approved for financial aid and knowing about that they're covered, that they can afford it, that they don't have to worry about providing the funds, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know, do most schools and most places, do they really want you to think that or to think about just because you're getting financial aid, that knowing about that there are some costs that you got to come out of pocket expenses too, such as one of those could be is like that if you like a laptop or that some books that are not paid for also. So we ought to know that with most students though, if you want to be like what you call which I'm sure most parents whoever that's concerned is knowing that that's like for adults is like for students adults is knowing that one responsibility, adults responsibility, if we're going to be getting like for financial aid though, it's like for responsibility, if we're going to be getting assistance to financial aid, one important reason knowing about, I'm like you say that well it worked for that person but it didn't work for me or something like that type of stuff, or knowing about that the types of expenses that come up. But let's just say though that on average though, if each student were to at least pay on addition to about let's just say $100 a month to about on average to about $190 a month. Let's just say that if it was $190 a month, so that would make on average per year of at least let's say $1,200 a year. So let's just say that for how much we are willing to pay for the cost of from the semester and then the books and supplies, stuff like that, and knowing that even if you are getting financial help through financial aid, and then of course with our taxes, that they say that about how much money do we think that we're paying in our tax returns, and let's just say for our taxes, if we were to actually do the math. And let's just say that they say that, well, only 90 cents. Like, no, I don't believe that. Like, well, if we would actually do the math and knowing about that, it's 90 cents. It's like, maybe a month, or they say that it's the rate nothing's no cost, no 90 cents, not even college. I'm like, well. Really, that it may be surprising, maybe what may still cost 90 cents. Let's just say that if we were to actually pay, if we would actually work out that degree in the mathematical digits right, where if we work out our payments, and then as well as passing our classes, that type of stuff, and knowing about if we actually do the math and knowing about for what's really cost this much. It's like that, anything that for what that costs $1 nowadays. Like the way I think about college don't cost $1, and if it did, then I'm sure that they would probably say that that they would be more likely that maybe that if college only cost $1, then more likely I'm sure that they would say that maybe a lot of students would not wait so long just to go back to school, and as well as knowing about that for how much they had in savings after all. But a lot of times, like talking about most people are like students that they say that they've been saving up for for about 2 years on their college fund, and let's just say that on average it was not 2,800, it was not 2,800, but let's just say if they started out with only if they were only able to save up at first that they were only able to they only started with about, let's just say on average $300. Nowadays it's like for at the most that if I can remember right what I started out with, I would probably say that I started out with only about maybe $100, but let's say on average if you start out your college fund was about maybe $300, $300 in some places that they say that you have to have at least $3,000 just to start at least $3,000. So it's like even with Health Through Financial Aid, is knowing about, I'm like, yeah, that like me, like other students, is knowing about, one ways to be treated like an adult, is knowing about being responsible for your own stuff, passing your classes, that type of stuff. But one thing I also want to point out too is knowing about completing the financial aid, paperwork. It's like, yeah, I had to have some guidance, but other than that, I was able to complete it at my own time, and then the questions that they asked, and there's like tests that they even have it to where like almost financial aid, FAFSA applications to where that they ask you, say, general questions and they quiz you, that type of stuff. And knowing about that, for if it's going to be loans or anything like that. But some students that may say that a lot of times that whenever they graduate and go out and find jobs, and then they may say that it's your hard working money that you start making more money, and then you want to go out and buy a new car. Like, oh, wait just a minute, you gotta take care of paying back your student loans also, or going on a vacation. If most of us thinking about, I'm like, yeah, that you want to go to maybe the Wyoming beach or something like that, or if it was the Rocky Mountains or somewhere like that, like you want to go somewhere special. But on your hand, at knowing about that, with most students though, is knowing about that the reasons about getting financial aid, from the government, knowing about that if it's financial help from the state, from the federal government, is knowing that really that we may start out with only so much to work with, and then we may only earn so much. But then on the other hand too, that really for most students and adults is knowing about the important responsibility, knowing about that really are we looking forward to really about getting jobs whenever we graduate. Are we looking forward to earning grants, earning credits? Are we looking forward to knowing about how much responsibility we're able to put into our hard work, and knowing about how we're able to manage things? Because whenever we're young, that we may think about that if we get paid maybe 90 cents to $1, or maybe up to $5 for our allowance, our weekly allowance, and then whenever you turn 18 years older, that 18 years older, that you're going to be like that, that you want to go ahead and complete the financial aid application on your own, and then you want to go ahead and answer a few questions, that type of stuff, and pay your own taxes. And then that's usually how I usually say it, is that knowing about, well, it worked for you, well, it may have worked for me, like like it got approved. It's like, how did the financial, I'm like, anybody say that, that it was approved for a reason? That they may say that, well, check my credit history, and knowing about, I'm like, I got denied. It's like talk about between approved and denied. And a lot of times that they say that sometimes that happens to if other credit history or anything else that goes on too. But they say that you can maybe always try again. But then on your hand, at knowing about that, sometimes that they more likely say though that with your credit history especially, and about maybe how much money that you have saved up, how much money you make, that type of stuff. But for the most part, is knowing about for financial aid, I can encourage most students is knowing about that if you're going to be getting financial aid to go to school, that I would advise anybody, any students, is doing that at least to keep continue making our own money, our own finances, to pay a little portion for whatever that we're willing to pay. If it's going to be about maybe $100 a month, maybe $50 a month, something like that. And a lot of times that they say the financial aid don't mean that everything's paid for automatically. That they may say there are some things that are not paid for, and then one of those things could be that maybe the cost of some materials, and as well as maybe the semester, the tuition. I'm like that, that basically that the tuitions that they say that, oh no, I'm like, with most tuitions that they say that that it all depends on how everything goes, and then if you pass the class or not. But for most of the time, with most tuitions, that's the student's responsibility, knowing about for how that's paid for. But let's just say if it is $6,000 a semester, and then I can go ahead and write this down here. for like for 4 years. Let's just say from 4 years, 4 to 5 years. I think I've mentioned this before that on average about 22,000. I would just say about $22,850 or so, and then 15 cents. So on average, this is about how much money in student loans that more likely some students would have. Maybe a little bit more, maybe up to 44,000, maybe up to 50. I'm like, there may be some students out there that they can maybe count up to, that they say, oh no, it's 70,000. That they got maybe a student loan of up to about 53,000, and let's just say up to the highest, I guess I'll go ahead and say up to $83,751 altogether. So if you have this amount of money that in student loans, is knowing about how you're going to be able to pay that back, but just knowing about, like, yeah, you go out and work out, and knowing about that, after you graduate, and that's like anybody say that's like one of your least worries, is knowing about, you thought financial aid paid for that, but it's like knowing about that if for how much we had to start out with, it may be surprised. It may be very surprising about how much we're able to maybe save up a little bit, knowing about, I'm like, really, it's like about getting a college education. It's all about going to school, getting a job for where they pay you very well for what you learned in school, compared to, say that yeah, I thought financial aid meant free aid. I thought financial aid meant free this, free that. But I can encourage anybody that knowing about that, if we were to take the time and do our studies, as knowing about there are some things that are extra help from the state and from the federal government too. But then on your hand, that if you do the work as done, knowing about offering to pay your fair share for what's owed, it's like for how much money you make in taxes, and as well as monthly payments of about $50 to $100 a month. I'm sure just like anybody would more likely say that just like renting a movie at the video store. If anybody say that, now I'm just picking an example here. If you were to be renting a movie from the video store, let's just say that for 5 days and 5 nights, how much money you think you'd be, besides overdues, but let's just say that on average, if college would cost only about $1 a day, like knowing about, if you multiply that times maybe 2,000 days out of the 2 or 3 years, and just knowing about, you'll be surprised about how much money was collected to be able to pay back those loans. But on the other hand, that I would advise anybody knowing about, if we're going to be getting any financial aid, knowing about that, it's like be reasonable and respective, is to keep it updated, and knowing about, keep working on it, keep passing our classes, and I'm sure that the price will be paid for on its own, and knowing about for, that type of stuff that needs to be worked out, knowing about that really about, I really just look at it as knowing about, anybody say that, knowing about, that it only worked for, if I do something, they may say that, there ain't that if you would actually do the math and find out that if it was the right answer, and knowing about, like, if I calculated it right, and like that, it didn't work for you the last time, but it worked for you this time, that type of stuff. But I would advise anybody that knowing about, I'm like, really take the responsibility of do the study and do the math, and knowing about with financial aid, that there are some expenses that are paid through financial aid, and there are some expenses that are not paid for through financial aid. And from all those expenses is knowing about that it's all about understanding about the reasonable reason, is like whenever we collect financial aid, is knowing that it's basically that they say that it's enough to at least get you started out with, and for how much money that you'll be making whenever you do get a job. And they say that, I'm like, whenever you do get a job, that paperwork on top of paperwork. That is like, if you're that type of person who don't like paperwork, but I can tell anybody here that there may be a lot of other things that maybe I don't like either, besides paperwork. Besides bills, it's like, you don't like getting sick with the flu either. I'm like, who does? Who does like getting sick with the flu? I'm like, there may be a lot of things that you don't like, that about being an adult that you don't like to deal with, such as, it's like, for knowing about the difference between high school and college, and you say that, that in college that they don't allow you to do email, and maybe that they don't allow you to bring phones. Or I'm like, yeah, that nowadays I'm like, even college should say that sometimes whenever you you have a calculator on your phone, that type of stuff. But if most of us know what I'm talking about, knowing about that with most time with college, though, that they may not count you as tardy every time in college compared to maybe in high school either. But knowing about is like that the way they treat you, knowing about that for whoever that's willing to help you out, and knowing about how much willingness you're able to put into doing the work on your own time being, other than relying on somebody else to do it, that type of stuff. So anyway, but talk about for the group work financial aid / collect activity.